hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon.
I'm 67 years old. All my life, I worked hard so my children could have more than I ever did. But instead of gratitude, I was met with humiliation. The kitchen light flickered when I turned it on that dull yellow glow, too cold to feel warm, too dim to feel alive. The overhead bulb buzzed faintly, like it too was tired of pretending to belong here. The tiles were clean, but not by their doing. I scrubbed them on my hands and knees last Sunday while the rest of the house slept in. My joints had screamed at me, but I stayed silent. It was past 7:00 p.m., and the sun had already dropped below the horizon. Through the window over the sink, I could see the last glow of daylight melting into a wash of dark indigo and ash blue. Crickets had started their nightly music, distant and rhythmic, a chorus of things that went on surviving without applause. The house itself was quiet, that strange, stretched kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful. No, this silence carried weight, like something left unsaid was sitting in the corner, waiting to be tripped over. Jessica sat on the couch with her legs tucked under her, scrolling on her phone with fast, sharp thumbs. A soft clicking came from her acrylic nails tapping the screen. Michael sat across from her, stirring his tea, slow and steady, the spoon ringing against the ceramic mug like a quiet warning bell. The air smelled of lavender cleaner and reheated pizza, things that didn't belong together but did now. I opened the pantry and stared. I don't even remember what I came for. Sugar, flour, have it. What I do remember is that moment just standing there, hand resting on the frame, staring at the shelves I had organized and stocked, pretending not to hear what had been echoing in my ears for days. Ma, you're still living under my roof. It's only fair. That word again, fair. He said it casually, like he was talking about splitting the bill at a diner, like I hadn't raised him with every ounce of strength I had left after his father passed away, like I hadn't slept on the couch for 3 years just so Anna and he could each have their own room, like I didn't sacrifice weekends, dates, birthdays, my own comfort, just so they never felt the weight of what we lacked. Now I was the weight a cost a monthly number $1,200. He started calling it helping with the bills, but soon it became a line repeated at least once a week. Under my roof. The emphasis always felt deliberate, like he needed me to remember where I stood, or rather where I no longer stood. And then there was Anna. She lived here, too. Same roof, same food, but no rent, not a single cent. Her laughter always filled the hallway light, sharp, polished. She was the kind of woman who always wore matching workout clothes, even if she never broke a sweat. Her perfume hung in the air long after she left a room, citrus and something expensive I couldn't name. Her SUV took up half the driveway, and still she rolled her eyes if I parked too close. Yet somehow she was seen as the guest, the cherished one. I was the one who paid. Every first Friday of the month, Michael held his hand out at the kitchen counter like he was accepting a delivery. Jessica would glance up from her phone and flash a tight, approving smile, like I was finally behaving, like I had earned a seat at the table at least for 30 days. I never argued, never asked why Anna didn't contribute. I just nodded and gave him the check. My fingers always trembled a little as I handed it over, but I'd steady them with a breath. I told myself it was dignity. I told myself it was just temporary. But deep down, I knew this was the price of not being alone. Some evenings I heard them talking. I didn't try to listen, but the walls in this house had their own way of whispering. One night, Anna's voice floated down the hallway. Well, she's basically your living maid. She should be paying. Jessica laughed light and cruel. I waited for Michael to say something, anything, but all I heard was the sound of the television turning up. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling fan blades spinning too slow, like they were mocking my patience. My heart ached with something heavier than sadness. It was something colder, familiar, but newly sharp. It reminded me of the winters after my husband died. How I'd sit by the heater in our small apartment, wrapped in 2 sweaters, watching my children sleep, knowing I couldn't afford to fix the leak in the roof or replace the old water heater. Back then, my love for them was armor. It protected me from the cold outside and the fear inside. I thought that love would carry into my old age like a kind of insurance. But here I was paying rent to my own child. Thanksgiving was the turning point. I woke up early that morning before the rest of the house. The sky was still strewn with silver-gray mist. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes, put on my soft-soled shoes, and moved quietly into the kitchen. I roasted the turkey exactly the way Michael used to love, stuffed with apples and rosemary. I made sweet potatoes with brown sugar and pecans. I folded the green bean casserole into the ceramic dish Michael gave me years ago, the one he probably forgot ever existed. I baked 2 pies, apple and pumpkin. By mid-afternoon, the smells filled the house. Warm cinnamon, roasted garlic, buttered rolls. I thought maybe this would be the moment they saw me again. Not the tenant, not the maid, their mother, the one who built their childhood out of stretchable meals and hand-me-downs washed until soft as clouds. Instead, as I was wiping my hands on a towel, Jessica walked in and said, without looking up, we invited some friends. So, could you eat earlier in your room? It's just going to be a little crowded. Crowded? That word. Like I was furniture. An afterthought that didn't match the decor. Michael stood behind her holding paper plates. He didn't even meet my eyes. Later, he brought a plate to my room, plastic fork, no napkin, and said, we'll clean up after. Don't worry. Then he shut the door without waiting for a reply. I stared at the food until it went cold. That night, I scrubbed the counters alone late after everyone had gone to sleep. The wine glasses in the sink still smelled like berries and oak. Laughter echoed faintly in my ears, not from the night itself, but from memory. From Thanksgivings when we were 5 to a table, cramped in a small apartment, laughing over dry turkey and burnt rolls, but still laughing, still together. Now the only thing that remained from those years was me. Still cooking, still cleaning, still giving, and now paying. As I turned to go back to my room, I noticed a plain, white envelope on the counter. It said, Ma, inside a neatly printed list of utilities and shared groceries. The total $21468. No note, no smiley face, just numbers like a ledger, like a receipt for my place in their lives. I went back to my room, closed the door softly, and sat on the edge of my bed. My knees ached, my back throbbed, but the pain that settled deepest was quiet, not sharp like a cut, but dull and constant, like a bruise you keep pressing just to feel something. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the sky turn from black to blue through the slats of the blinds and listened to the sounds of a house I no longer belonged to. Somewhere in those silent hours, something shifted. Not a snap, a slow break. The kind that doesn't make a sound, but leaves a crack wide enough to let the truth in. I didn't always notice it right away. It started small, like the way Michael said my name, not Mom or Ma anymore, just her when he talked. About me to Jessica. Can you check if she's done with the laundry, or if she left the kettle on again? It was subtle at first, but the more I heard it, the more it sounded like I didn't belong, like I was something to be managed. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. It felt like a tiny sting that kept returning, like the sharp poke of a splinter that no one sees, but you feel every second. And I did feel it in the back of my throat when I tried to answer with a smile, in the center of my chest when I laid awake at night, wondering if I was the problem. Every word he said had a new tone, sharp or dry. There was no kindness behind his eyes anymore, no patience. It was like I had become a stranger in my own son's world. Once I asked him if he wanted me to make his favorite soup, the one I used to make when he had the flu as a child, and he said, "No thanks. We don't eat that kind of thing anymore." It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Quick, cold. Like he was embarrassed that I still thought I had anything to offer. My hands trembled slightly as I rinsed the pot I'd planned to use. I stood at the sink, watching the water swirl down the drain, and remembered the nights he used to beg for that soup, curled up on the couch, trusting that I could make everything better. Jessica wasn't any better. She never said anything directly cruel. No, she was too polished for that. But she made sure I heard the little things. "I just like a cleaner smell in the laundry," she said once, after re-washing the clothes I had folded. That same day, she pulled out a second container of detergent and labeled it with her name in black marker. "I like the towels fluffier. No offense," she added another time with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't have to say more. It was all in the way she moved around me, correcting, adjusting, replacing. She would refold things I'd already put away, reorganize cabinets I had cleaned and never once thanked me. I started folding towels twice, just to get them the way she liked. I stopped using the lavender-scented softener I'd always loved. I stopped offering to help in the kitchen because even the way I chopped vegetables seemed to bother her. But nothing changed. I was still treated like a shadow, something inconvenient, something they couldn't throw away, but also couldn't bear to look at. Every time Michael reminded me about the rent, it felt like a slap. Not a hard one, but one that landed every time in the exact same place. "Hey, Ma, just a reminder. The month's almost up. You got the check ready," he said it loud, always in front of Jessica, always in the kitchen, as if to make sure I remembered the power balance, as if to show her he was in charge of the house. I'd nod, quietly hand it over, and walk back to my room without a word. But inside I was burning. It wasn't just the money. It was the way he made me feel small for needing a place to stay, as if I hadn't given him a roof for decades, as if I hadn't skipped meals so he could eat better. That check was more than money. It was a reminder of how far I had fallen in his eyes. One time, Anna laughed when she saw me scrubbing the floor. "Ma, you really don't have to play Cinderella. We have a vacuum, you know." Michael chuckled, too, not because it was funny, but because he could, because no one else in that room thought I deserved dignity. I didn't answer. I just kept scrubbing, because if I stood up and looked at them, I might say something I'd regret, or worse, cry, and I wasn't going to give them that. The floor was warm under my knees, but my hands were cold, soaked from the bucket of soapy water. I focused on each tile like it was a shield, something I could polish into forgetting. Then there were the little rules they made without ever saying they were rules. Jessica started labeling groceries. Her name on the oat milk, Anna's on the hummus. One day, I made myself toast and used a little of Jessica's strawberry jam. Just one spoonful. Later, I found a new note on the fridge. "Please respect labels. Everyone buys their own." I stared at that note for a long time, my hand still holding the fridge door open, the cold air brushing my skin. It felt like being told I didn't belong. Even at breakfast, I didn't touch the jam again. Evenings were the worst. I used to sit with them in the living room, watch TV, make small talk. Then, slowly, they started watching shows I didn't understand, shows they knew I wouldn't. Enjoy loud, flashy things with inside jokes. They'd laugh at jokes I didn't get. And when I asked, Anna would say, "It's okay, Ma. It's not your kind of thing." Eventually, I stopped going in there. I stopped trying. I spent more time in my room. That small space became my world. My bed, my little window, my books. It smelled like lavender oil and old paper. The lighting was soft from the yellow lamp I brought from my old house. The walls were bare except for a calendar I stopped updating months ago. It was the only place in the house that didn't make me feel like I was in the way. Michael used to knock sometimes, but never to talk. Always for something. "Do you know where the duct tape is? Can you watch the kids Saturday? Jessica and I have dinner plans." Never just to ask how I was doing. Never to say thank you. Once when the twins spilled juice on the carpet, Jessica looked right at me and said, "Next time you give them juice, maybe do it in the kitchen." I hadn't even been in the room. She didn't care. I swallowed hard and said nothing. That was the thing about all of it. The silence. Not mine. Theirs. They never apologized. Never explained. never said why they were treating me this way. But every word, every sigh, every look carried a message. You're here because we allow it. Be grateful. Stay out of the way. I started waking up earlier, 5 a.m. before anyone else. I made my coffee quietly, sat at the table alone, stared out the window at the empty street. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, steady and indifferent. The world outside still felt normal. The wind still moved the trees. The sky still changed colors every morning. Soft pinks to gold, then blue. It reminded me there was a world beyond these walls. That maybe I wasn't invisible everywhere, just here. Sometimes I'd hear a bird chirping and feel tears rise without warning because I remembered who I used to be. Someone people smiled at. Someone who held birthday parties and iron shirts and was thanked. Someone who mattered. Now I was just someone who paid rent. I tried not to keep score, but every little cut stayed with me. The sighs when I asked a question. The look Jessica gave me when I opened a package that wasn't mine. The way Michael raised his voice when I accidentally used the wrong remote. Even Anna's jokes. You're not on Facebook, right, Ma? Too complicated. Each one chipped away at something inside me. I felt myself shrinking, quietly disappearing. And still, I smiled when the kids ran up to hug me. Their little arms around my neck were the only moments I felt human. Still, I cleaned the dishes no one asked me to clean. Still, I gave them money they never earned. I wanted to believe it was love, but it was something else now. It was habit. It was fear. Fear of what would happen if I stopped. Fear of where I'd go. Fear that maybe they were right. But deep inside me, something was waking up. A part of me that remembered my worth. Not loudly, not with anger, just with quiet, growing certainty that I didn't deserve this. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to stay. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a big explosion or a final argument. There was just a moment, quiet, almost still, when everything inside me simply stopped accepting. It was a Tuesday, overcast. The sky outside was a dull, lifeless gray, like the color of wet ash. The windows let in a weak light, pale and cool, casting faint shadows on the floor. The house smelled faintly of reheated leftovers and fabric softener. It was the kind of smell that stuck to you, settled in your clothes, not unpleasant, but dull. I was folding laundry in the kitchen. The towels were warm, fresh from the dryer, but my hands felt cold. I was halfway through stacking a pile when Michael walked in. His voice broke the stillness. Yeah, she's still here. What can I do? She's got nowhere else to go. He was on the phone, but the words hit me like a slap. He wasn't whispering. He didn't even lower his voice. He said it like I wasn't 5 feet away, like I was a piece of furniture he was tired of looking at. My hands paused mid-fold. The towel suddenly felt like lead. My knuckles stiffened and my chest tightened in that quiet way it does when your heart sinks. But your pride won't let you react. I kept folding, but something in me went silent. That night, I laid in bed with the lights off. My body acted in that familiar way. The dull pull in my knees from crouching to clean baseboards. The pinch in my back from scrubbing the lower cupboards. I hadn't been asked to. I just didn't want to hear Jessica sigh and redo it behind me. The room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of the street lamp leaking through the blinds. I watched shadows ripple on the ceiling as the fan turned slowly above me. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink for a long time. I just remembered. This wasn't new. I thought of my father the way he stood on our porch when I was 17, holding a small envelope in his callous hands. You need to leave, he said. That was all. No explanation, no warmth, just those 4 words. Inside the envelope were $60 and a slip of paper with a stranger's address. I left and I built a life, but that same voice echoed, now decades later in my own son. She's got nowhere else to go. I had spent every part of my adult life trying to make sure my children would never feel unwanted, that they would always have a bed to sleep in, a warm meal, a place to return to. And now, here I was being spoken about like I was a stain on the rug. That's when something in me shifted. Not with rage, not with tears, with clarity. The kind that comes after being exhausted for too long. The kind that sits beside you and says, enough. The next morning, I rose before sunrise. The world outside was still dark, but I could see a soft indigo climbing over the rooftops. Birds hadn't begun their songs yet. The house was silent. I put on my robe, shuffled into the kitchen, and made coffee. The smell filled the room, warm and grounding, like a memory, held in steam. I sipped it slowly, watching the lights stretch across the floor. And I decided I had savings, quiet money tucked away through the years from birthday cards I never spent, small side jobs, a tax return I never mentioned. I told myself it was just in case. The case had come. Later that day, while Jessica took the twins to a play date and Michael was upstairs glued to his laptop, I made my calls. I spoke softly, took notes in the corner of my planner. I kept my voice calm. 2 days later, I stepped into a small villa by the coast. It was cream-colored, the kind of pale yellow-white that glows gently in the sun. The shutters were faded blue. The porch was framed by overgrown rosemary and wildflowers. I breathed in the salty air, tinged with lemon and damp earth. The woman showing the house was kind. She told me the last owner was a widow who had spent her mornings reading on the back patio, surrounded by the roses she planted herself. The house was quiet inside. No hum of television, no footsteps above. Me, just the sound of the breeze slipping through the cracked kitchen window. My shoes made soft taps on the tiled floor. I let my fingers brush the edge of the countertop, cool, smooth stone. No stains, no crumbs. I walked room to room. I didn't say much. I just listened to my own breathing, to the stillness. I bought it, paid in full, and I told no one. Over the next week, I packed slowly, quietly, a few boxes at a time. I didn't want much, just the essentials. My photo albums, a box of letters, my mother's quilt, the yellow lamp, and the mug Michael made in 2nd grade. A chipped, uneven thing. I held it longer than I meant to. Michael didn't notice the packing, or if he did, he said nothing. Jessica barely looked at me at all that week, and I hadn't visited in over 10 days. The house had grown colder, even though the weather outside had warmed. Then came the morning I left. It was raining, not a storm, just a soft, steady drizzle, the kind that paints the sidewalk darker and makes everything smell like wet leaves and soil. I wore my coat and held the umbrella tight in one hand. My suitcase was by the door. A single check, my last rent, rested on the counter. Michael walked in, rubbing his eyes. His voice was groggy. Going somewhere? I looked at him. Really? Looked? Yes. He blinked, frowning. You didn't say anything. I don't need permission. Jessica came down the stairs in her robe, towel wrapped around her hair. Her eyes flicked from my suitcase to my face. Is everything okay? I'm moving out. She paused, confused. Wait, just like that. I nodded. Just like that. I picked up the check and laid it gently on the countertop. This is the last one. You won't have to remind me again. They didn't speak. Michael opened his mouth and closed it again. Jessica shifted her weight, but said nothing. I opened the front door. The air outside was cool, fresh, full of that clean smell that only rain brings. As I stepped into it, I felt lighter. The car ride to the villa felt like waking up. The windshield wipers swept away the rain in gentle beats. Outside, the world passed by grocery stores, people with umbrellas, children hopping over puddles, life, color, movement. At the villa, I unlocked the door. The key turned smoothly. I stepped in. The light was soft, filtering through gauzy curtains. I opened the windows. The breeze that flowed and carried sea air and quiet. I walked barefoot across the clean floor. My footsteps didn't echo. They belonged. I made tea. I used my mug. I sat at my table. A bird chirped loudly outside, landing on the windowsill. I smiled. Then I laughed. A soft, surprised sound that rose up from somewhere deep. I had been quiet for so long. I had forgotten how I sounded. I could have fought. I could have screamed, demanded to be seen, pointed out every moment of disrespect. But I chose something harder. I chose to leave with dignity. Not because they earned my silence, but because I finally knew I didn't owe them my pain. Now I sit by the window each morning. I drink my tea. I breathe, and I remember who I am. I didn't run away. I walked forward, and I am not lost. I am home. It started 2 days after I left. The sun rose soft that morning, peeking through a thin curtain of clouds. Light spilled across the wooden floor of my new living room, warming the quiet air. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the open window, carried by a sea breeze that always seemed to arrive just when the silence got too still. The waves could be heard in the distance, not roaring, but steady, patient. It was the kind of peace I hadn't known in years. And then my phone buzzed. Jessica. The message read, "Where did you go? The kids miss you." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering above it. There was no warmth in the words. No sign of regret, just performance. The kind you rehearse, not the kind you feel. I didn't answer. I set the phone down on the table beside me and returned to my tea. The cup was warm in my hands, its steam curling gently in the golden light. In this home, silence was safety. Back in theirs, it had always been tension. By the 3rd day, they grew bolder. Michael, no. Ma, why are you doing this? The question almost made me laugh. Doing what? Refusing to keep being used. I didn't respond. That evening, as the wind stirred the rosemary bush just outside my porch, Jessica called. I didn't answer, but I played the voicemail. Her voice was tight, forced calm covering nerves. This whole thing is really hard on the kids. They're asking where you are. Could you just come over and talk again? No mention of me, of what I might be feeling, just how my absence was causing them problems. They weren't used to being ignored. They were used to my loyalty. Quick replies, quick fixes, quiet forgiveness. I had always responded to every need, every little cry for help, whether spoken or implied. I had taught them that I had no limits, that I would keep bending until I broke. But not anymore. On the 5th day, I was in the middle of watering the potted plants that came with the villa, mostly succulents and one stubborn fern, when I heard the familiar sound of Michael's engine in the gravel. I froze. He knocked twice, not hard but firm. Ma, are you in there? I stood in the kitchen, heart still, watching the light play across the tile. I didn't move. He knocked again, softer this time. I just want to talk. I heard something in his voice. Strain, uncertainty. Not the tone of a man confident in his control. The tone of someone unsure of the script. Still, I didn't answer. Eventually, he left. The tires crunched on the gravel, fading into the wind. The next morning, a new message. You could have talked to us first. You didn't have to leave like that. You've made everything harder. I read it twice, then 3 times. The words didn't sting. They irritated, as if I had thrown a tantrum, not reclaimed my dignity, as if walking away from constant disrespect was dramatic. I had paid rent. I had cooked. I had kept my voice down when Jessica made her pointed suggestions. I had scrubbed floors and watched children and made space for their needs. And now I was the problem. But there was no more guilt, only a deeper understanding of how little they had seen me. I hadn't left to hurt them. I left to protect what little was left of me. And now, with me gone, the machine they built had started to creak and crack. On the 7th day, a message from Anna. Hey, so are you okay? Michael's been acting weird. Jessica's stressed. I don't know what happened. But I hope you're all right. Hope I'm all right. Not a word about the rent. Not a word about the chores. Just confusion because, without me, their routine didn't work. I didn't reply. I was still angry. still mourning the years I had poured into a house that only saw me as background. Day 10. Jessica, again. This time, her voice cracked in the voicemail. We're sorry. Okay. I didn't realize how much you were doing. We didn't mean to make you feel like that. That no ownership. Just a vague apology, like tossing a wet tissue toward a flood. Not we charged you rent while Anna stayed for free. Not we never said thank you for cleaning our messes. Not we dismissed your worth in front of our kids. Just that apologies should carry the weight of truth. Hers floated hollow. Then came silence. Then came the shift. The guilt wore off and something sharper took its place. On the 12th day, Michael sent a longer message. You just left. You didn't even give us a chance to fix things. You didn't have to. Blow everything up like this. Blew everything up. What I did was quiet. What they had done day after day was loud. It was in the sighs when I spoke. The way Jessica rewrote every rule without telling me. The dinners I wasn't invited to. The way Michael called me her in front of the kids. They had torn it all down and expected me to hold up the beams. Now they called my absence a collapse. But I hadn't dropped the house. I had simply stepped out. By the end of that week, I was sitting on the porch, the sky above painted in soft shades of lavender and peach, when a neighbor from the old block called. A woman I used to walk with when I lived with them. Michael's been in a mood, she said gently. Saw him and Jessica arguing in the driveway. Kids were crying. I think they're having a hard time without you. I thanked her, then sat quietly as the wind moved through the lemon tree beside the porch. The scent of citrus was sharp and fresh. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious because I hadn't wanted them to fail. I just didn't want to be erased. And now in my absence, the truth was surfacing. They hadn't valued me. They had valued what I did. The tasks, the money, the silence. Now that I was gone, they missed the structure, the comfort, the hands that always cleaned, and the voice that never complained. But they didn't miss me, and that was the wound I still carried. But I didn't cry. Instead, I went back inside, the cool tile greeting my bare feet. I lit a candle. The scent of vanilla filled the air. I opened a book. Let the silence fill the space like music. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the center of my own life. Not an assistant, not a tenant, not a maid, not a grandmother on duty, just a woman in her own home. And I didn't need a single person to validate it. I knew, and that was enough. The first message I answered came from someone I didn't expect. It wasn't Michael or Jessica, or even Anna. It was Mrs. Alvarez, an old neighbor from 2 streets over. She had seen me once at the grocery store with Michael and later sent me a simple text. I always noticed how kind you were with the children. They clung to you like sunshine. I hope you're doing okay. I stared at the message, blinking back an emotion I hadn't felt in weeks. Not guilt, not pain, recognition. A woman I barely knew had seen what my own children had ignored. I replied, thank you. That means more than I can explain. Then I put my phone down and stepped outside. The air was warm that morning. Hazy sunlight filtered through the lemon tree leaves, casting gentle, dappled shadows on the porch. The breeze smelled like salt and rosemary. I had a basket of laundry beside me, not because I had to, but because I wanted to air dry my clothes in the sun, something I hadn't done since I was a young wife in a small apartment with no dryer. And as I hung each item, I felt present, grounded, not invisible. A week passed before the pressure started again. It began with a string of photos from Jessica, pictures of the twins at the park holding up signs. We miss you, Grandma. They were sweet, manipulatively sweet. The kids were never the problem. But the timing, that was no accident. Then came the comments. Anna posted a vague message on social media. Some people abandon their families and call it peace. I call it selfish. I didn't reply, but I felt the sting, not because she believed it, but because part of me still wanted to be understood. Then the messages got more direct. Michael, the holidays are coming. Don't make this a statement. Jessica, the kids cry at night. They think you're mad at them. Please just call. And for a moment, I almost did. But then I remembered. I remembered standing barefoot in their kitchen, holding a checkbook in one hand and a damp dishcloth in the other, while Michael told me, "Well, it's only fair." I remembered Jessica wiping down the counters after I cleaned them, Anna rolling her eyes when I asked her to, take her shoes off inside. I remembered all of it, and I remembered how no one ever told me I was welcome. So I stayed silent. They didn't stop. Jessica left a gift on my porch, a framed photo of the kids and a note. "Come back. We'll figure it out." But they weren't offering love. They were offering a return to my role. The unpaid caregiver, the soft-spoken helper, the one who disappears into the background. I left the frame leaning against the lemon tree. 2 days later, Michael showed up. No warning, just a knock at the door. I opened it not because I owed him that, but because I wanted to see how he'd look at me now. His face was thinner than I remembered. Tired. He wasn't angry. He was uncertain. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. We sat across from each other in the living room. The window was open. A seagull cried out in the distance. The room smelled faintly of citrus and old wood. "I didn't think you'd really go," he said after a while. I nodded. "I know." He looked down. "I thought maybe you just needed space. I didn't think you'd want to be alone." "I'm not alone," I said, voice calm. "I'm finally with someone who respects me." He looked confused. "Who?" I smiled. "Myself." He didn't speak for a long time. "I miss you," he said. "Eventually. The kids miss you." "I miss who I used to be," I said softly. "But not who you became, not how you treated me." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I'm sorry," he said. The words hung in the air. "I believe you," I said. "But I'm still not coming back." He nodded. Slowly, and for the first time in years, he looked like he understood. When he left, I sat on the porch again. The sun was dipping low. Orange and gold spilled across the water. A few birds traced the sky, their wings quiet against the horizon. I had always feared this moment, choosing myself over the people I loved. But now that I didn't feel empty. I felt whole. I lit a small candle as the sun sank and let the silence settle around me like a shawl. And in that quiet I thought of every woman who gave too much, waited too long, and forgot her own name in the process. This was for her, for them, for me. I realized age is not about weakness. It's about dignity. And if you've ever felt like you don't belong, you're not alone. I won't be afraid to tell the truth anymore, even if it hurts. And if you felt something reading this, share it because someone else needs to hear it.
Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon. Thanks for watching.